Hello, and welcome to another episode of Supreme Commander Shenanigans featuring the Forged Alliance Forever lobby. It is a fancy schmancy thing you can download that lets you connect to other players, including a ladder and a bunch of mods. If you like Supreme Commander, or you would like to play, or you like what you see here, I recommend you go check it out. Today's game includes two very high-level players, Voodoo in blue and Mad Mozart in red down there at the bottom. Our map here is Badlands, and it's pretty much the polar opposite to Winter Duel. There is a ton of mass and a ton of mass points to build your stuff on. Speaking of Winter Duel, in the last cast I spoke about Flynn and Nekwalich as being average players, but I double-checked on it and it turns out that those guys are actually both in the upper quartile of the game's ladder. It looked like an average game to me and I was trying to go by scores, but I don't know, it's hard to say. Supreme Commander has kind of a steep learning curve. There are a lot of subtleties and tools within this game, and all the units have little quirks and abilities that you tend to forget. You can get a very fair distance up in the ladder just by mastering a few core techniques. However, Voodoo and Mad Mozart are up in the top, so these guys have pretty much all of it under control. Excluding, of course, a few crucial things, such as tricky psychology. For example, any marketer can tell you that colors are a dangerous weapon that can be applied to thought control. As we all know, red is supposed to be an aggressive color, so that's gonna make Mad Mozart play aggressively, and blue is supposed to be a calming, relaxing color, so Voodoo might potentially forget that he's playing an aggressive game, and will fall asleep or something. This was all in Sun Tzu, trust me, it's there, don't look it up. Both players are playing Cybran, so we know that they both have the moral high ground and are therefore very motivated for their cause, so the advantage lies with Mad Mozart. Of course, Mozart is, as we know, a musician, so it will be interesting to see how these two players overcome their crippling disadvantages. That's what I love about watching high-level play. It's so nuanced. But speaking of nuance, let's have a look at the nuances of this map that we're on. You can see all over the place are these little green dots, disgusting shade of lime green. You will want to cover these in mass extractors, not just to hide their ugly color, but also because that's a ton of resources and you will lose without them. You've got to put your basic macro skills to work. However, each of these craters is also full of mass that can be reclaimed. In fact, we can see that early on, both players have sent engineers to suck up the mass in the craters closest to their base, while Mad Mozart sends spidery spies to keep an eye on the mass in the center of the map. Voodoo can try to go down there to suck up all that black stuff, but if he does, Mozart will be informed about it. More realistically, this gives Mozart the ability to see whether or not Voodoo has an attack on the way. Now, one thing I noticed that's interesting is the Cybran scouts have the ability to cloak. That means they can hide from the visible eye of their enemy. But for whatever reason, a lot of high-level players don't use that ability. I'm gonna guess the reason is because the cloaking ability takes 10 power per tick. A T1 power generator produces 20 power per tick, so you could really only power 2 of those scouts with 1 power generator. Or, in short, these guys just don't feel like building the extra power generators to keep the cloaking on. Fair enough, I guess, because the cloaking doesn't hide them from radar, and they can still be caught and killed if they're in radar range. Still though, on a map this big, with 4 bases worth of resources, I kinda wonder if they're not being a little bit too conservative. As in, maybe it's something they've learned from hard experience, and it's become somewhat drilled in, but on this map, or maps like it, it might be more useful. It would appear that Mozart is living up to his color advantage as the more aggressive color. He's sending a bomber over to harass Voodoo. This is actually a subtly crucial moment. You notice that Mozart is actually going for a bit of early aggression, but he's weaker on the macro, whereas Voodoo is focusing on his economy. Because Mozart got fewer engineers out, and in exchange to get units on the roll a little bit sooner, he's got to make up for this by attacking some mass points and killing some engineers. He got 2 engineers with that bombing run, that's good, that slows down the mass reclaim, but now he's got to kill some mass fabricators. The entire point, of course, is to break even on this gamble, or preferably, get ahead. So far, it's looking pretty favorable to pay off. The ground forces are not yet on the move to intercept. Oh, and here they go. And meanwhile, Voodoo's ACU is on the complete other side of the field. And oh, I like what Mozart is doing here. If this is in fact intentional, it looks like he's moving his units to the northwest and Voodoo's forces are chasing him. But he's got one little guy over here who just starts shooting at buildings, kinda uncontested. Oh wait, oh now he's just sitting over there, not shooting at anything. I thought he was gonna run over and kill some engineers. I guess Mozart got wrapped up dealing with something else. Now Voodoo's got a spider bot to chase Mozart away. By the way, I know that people have commented and they say that these are not spider bots. Spider bots are the big ones with the giant death ray laser. These are mantises, but they look like spider bots to me and they're spider bots in my heart. So when I say that a spider bot chases off another spider bot, what I really mean is not at all what I said. I'm lying to you in reality, but not in spirit. Anyway, Mozart sends in another unit of spider bot skirmishers. This tactic paying off well, it has gotten the return that he's looking for. He is now caught up in terms of income to Voodoo. Didn't get any mass extractors, but he is very wisely focused on those engineers. The rest of the army can burn for all it matters. If the engineers cannot get to their target, then Voodoo cannot increase his income, and that's good. It looks like Mozart is trying to disengage. That's all the damage those skirmishers can do, but here comes another single spider bot to cause trouble. Oh no! Run away, spider bot! You're all by yourself! Look at him go. No engineers over there. That's probably what he's looking for. Run! Pew 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 pew! Dancing around a hail of gunfire. Oh. Send a letter home to his family. He was a brave spider. These two other spider bots, though, they got away, and they are now looping around, hunting for engineers, trying to build mass extractors in the back. Voodoo could try to chase them, but spider bots are fast. Obnoxiously fast. They're the fastest T1 unit that still has combat capability. Technically, light assault bots are faster, but light assault bots are basically eggs with guns attached to them. When using light assault bots, you're lucky if the things don't break from the recoil of their own weapons. Anyway, it looks like Mozart has decided to pull back for now. Voodoo has apparently got an army underneath him, and Mozart doesn't want to waste his mass by just sending troops into that. In any case, it doesn't matter. Mozart's early aggression paid off for him. You can see now he's got just a slight eco lead. It goes up and down as they do their reclaim, but you can see that Mozart is just a little bit ahead. That's good. Everything is going perfectly. All according to plan. But of course Mozart cannot relax because Voodoo had a slight eco lead earlier, so really they're just kind of evened out. But alright, here comes Mozart down the middle, trying from a different attack vector because Voodoo is all prepared for stuff on the west. Still got a small unit just to make Voodoo think that there's still something over there. Basically the message is, don't pull these western guys over to the center. If you leave here, I'm gonna come right back. It's kind of an interesting dynamic when you think about it. Because Mozart is the one who's being aggressive and applying pressure, he gets to control Voodoo a lot. See, all it takes is a small squad of spider bots to threaten Voodoo's engineers and his infrastructure. So if he wants to drive off those spider bots, he's got to keep a slightly larger squadron on hand that can easily overwhelm them and force them to retreat. The mere threat of harassment can provoke a slightly disproportionate response. Now, a slightly less experienced player might be tempted to build up a large force, expecting something to attack him over there at the west. But Voodoo, because he knows what he's doing, is just keeping eyes on what's down there using scout planes. That way, he keeps just enough troops on hand to deal with this problem should it arise, but he's not overcommitted to the defense. Speaking of commitment, it looks like Mozart is falling back a bit from his attack on the center, seems to have gone bust. At the very least, it's delayed or prevented Voodoo from getting those mass points at the front. All this aggression has been definitely beneficial to Mozart. You can see now he's leading in resources to a fair degree, 60 to 40. Clearly, being the color red has invigorated Mozart. It's caused him to have aggressive eco and aggressive attacks in the center, aggressive harassment. It's doing really well for him. But Voodoo, his blue color has caused him to be racked with self-doubt. Oh no, says Voodoo. What do I do? I haven't been saving for retirement. Can I put my kids through college? Do we have a purpose in life, or is it all just kind of what you make of it? Just full of existential sadness. I had a friend who took a marketing course. He assured me this is how this works. Although, apparently also V is like a power letter, so Voodoo pushing back across the middle, maybe invigorated by the V in his name. Maybe marketing, sometimes a little silly. All that stuff is kind of like placebos and whatever, but I'm willing to believe in it. Red OP, please nerf red. Anyway, it looks like Voodoo has decided he's been passive for too long, he's let Mozart dictate the pace of things, and that needs to end right now. You can see that he's aggressively pushing his ACU up over there on the east. This is as dangerous as it is bold. The commander is an army alone, but there are enough resources on this map to overcome the commander 4 times. However, whether by intuition or sheer dumb luck, now appears to be the perfect time to push this. Mozart seems to have slowed army production to reach up to Tech 2. Given that Voodoo is at a resource disadvantage, his window to press forward is very small, but he's taking it. Voodoo's attack on the center has been blunted somewhat, and he's now being slowed down by point defenses on the east. Slowed being the key word here, because there's not really a whole lot defending those point defenses, so it's just a matter of taking them out. He's pushing the center, trying to regain control of this aggression, but it looks like Voodoo has got a much larger force up there. Now Mozart has got a radar up at the front, so he can probably see those forces closing in on either side of his attackers, but maybe he's wrapped up with Micro over here on the east, trying to defend that point defense. That's always one of those more absurd ironies, you've got to defend your point defenses. But Mozart realizes this is not going well, he calls for his units to fall back. They are being chased and shot in the butts. A horrific hail of ground-to-butt fire. Those units will not be able to sit for a week. It looks like Voodoo has achieved his crucial push here. He is now moving engineers out to take those mass extraction points. He really needs to catch up on the resources. Mozart has fallen back, he's shoring up his units, and over here, Voodoo, you can see on the far east, moving his ACU up all by himself. All it would take is a flock of jesters to go over there and just kill his ACU. This is incredibly risky. Jesters are gunships, for those unfamiliar, but even so, if Mozart had a big enough army, that ACU could be surrounded and killed right now. However, if exists in a parallel universe, Mozart doesn't have a large enough army, he doesn't have gunships. Whatever the case, I would guess that Voodoo decided that he can win now, or he can die in the future. He chose the former. This little gap while Mozart techs up his units is starting to look really dangerous for him, as units begin to flow down at the east over there like a waterfall of angry spiders. So many foes of the Cybrans wake up in cold sweats over stuff like this. So many tiny little spiders, so many lasery bites! The welts require so much ointment. Even if you fend it off, you'll never be the same man that you were. But it looks like he's penetrating deep into his base, wiping out that whole section over here. Mozart is diverting forces to try to intercept what's coming down, but there is not enough here, and he's still working on that new technology. Mozart is moving units on the west over here upward, in the hopes that maybe a light harassment campaign might distract some of Voodoo's forces. You can see Mozart's unit firing at a little engineer over here. Pew 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 pew! Vengeance! Having a really hard time hitting their mark, though. Just blasting the terrain. Oh man. Today sucks. Today sucks so hard, can't even kill this frickin' engineer! And he goes around behind the hill, and is impervious to attack. I don't know if Voodoo intentionally microed that, but whatever the case, I'm pretty sure the men will not tell their commander, because he is having a bad day back at home. Voodoo continues to pile troops into Mozart's base. There's a few rhinos out there on the ground. Those are always more cost-effective than your T1 units, but the trouble is, there's not enough of them. Voodoo's ACU is able to overcharge them as he spots them, and they are gone. However, Mozart has managed to complete 4 T2 factories in the center of his base. They are now producing more rhinos. Rhinos are some of the biggest, blackest, beefiest tanks that you can get at Tier 2. They're the most threatening tanks available, arguably except for the Obsidian, but the Obsidian has a higher DPS, all loaded into a single alpha strike. The Rhino has a high rate of fire and does very well against T1 units. Of course, the Obsidian is an Aeon tank, so it's kind of a moot point, but you would be surprised, even 4 of these Rhinos is enough to turn around a battle like this because they're so dangerous. Why? Because they survive for quite a while and they kill off a lot of units, and the more units they kill, the more their health goes up and the more they regenerate health. Overcharge is still a big threat to them, but now you can see that Mozart has thrown his own ACU into the fray, and he's gonna push Voodoo back. At the north, it looks like Mozart has pushed his units into Voodoo's base, but what is this crap? There's just a bunch of point defenses over here! Who does that? Things didn't work out for that skirmishing group, but he's got another one coming along. They can probably go in there and kill that hydrocarbon plant, but not much else. Looks like Voodoo has got to fall back. He's starting to lose this thing. Defender's advantage is in Mozart's favor. We've got another squad of rhinos coming along. Man, if Voodoo had showed up just 1 minute later, this whole thing probably would have been against him. As it is, this has turned out to be a very productive push. Mozart is now knocked down to Voodoo's level in terms of eco. He's still a little bit higher, but that's probably thanks to Reclaim. Another important fact of note, it looks like Voodoo has taken control of the sky. He's got interceptors flying around like he owns the place. They're probably looking for a spot to put down a swimming pool when they take over. Why, one of these craters would be ideal. Speaking of the craters, it looks like Mozart has just got some bombers sitting around inside one of them. Question is now, what do you do with those when you have no control of the air? He could use them to harass Voodoo's base, I suppose, since Voodoo's interceptors are here and not over his base. Maybe just go around behind and take out some of those mass extractors in the back. Of course, there's a lot of ground to cover, and the problem is right there on his doorstep. In any case, Mozart is still leading as far as resources goes. He's got some of his extractors upgraded to Tech 2. Voodoo is now upgrading his ACU to get a bigger gun on it. If Mozart's gonna be running around with rhinos, then the ACU is gonna equalize things. The gun upgrade for the Cybrans is kind of interesting. Most ACUs allow you to upgrade your engineering capacity and your weapons, but the Cybrans can only do one or the other. The engineering upgrade increases your health and regeneration, so this is a choice. Do you gain more killing potential or more survivability? Looks like Mozart decided to use his bombers to cause a little bit of trouble for Voodoo, blow up some of those units that are helping to assist the ACU. Anyway, the big advantage that's going to come from this gun upgrade is it's going to increase Voodoo's range. Not just for his regular gun, but also for his overcharge cannon. The overcharge cannon is of course powerful enough to kill most units in one hit. Ding! gun is done! Now, rhinos are actually more cost-effective than Tier 1 units. In fact, you can see that Voodoo has mixed in a few rhinos with his own composition, but they come in smaller numbers because they're more expensive. With the overcharge, especially at a great range, this can make them a liability rather than an advantage. Every time that Voodoo powers up that overcharge cannon, bang! You lose a rhino. Somewhat crucially undermines their status as elite units. Worse, because the ACU is right there, after he kills them, he can actually reclaim their corpse and use it to build more of his own army. Even better for Voodoo, with that long range, he can actually just walk away and kite the things, blowing them up at his leisure. And as you can now see, with just a little bit of legwork from Voodoo's ACU, Mozart has now lost a substantial percentage of his forces. Oftentimes, the trouble with going straight for T2 units and not mixing in Tier 1 units is that you won't saturate your opponent's targeting priority. For every 5 Rhino tanks that you build, you could instead build 23 spiders. Now those 5 Rhino tanks are much better, but the micro to stop those 5 tanks is way easier than the micro to stop 23 spiders. That's why, even though Mozart is sitting on a tech advantage and a resource advantage, he's in a losing position now. A lot of times, if you watch the upper level players play, you'll find that they don't typically do what Mozart has done. Usually they do what Voodoo's doing, where they have a few Tech 2 units mixed in with a Tech 1 swarm. My guess is Mozart simply didn't expect that Voodoo would walk his ACU up here. It is very silly, very risky, probably could have lost Voodoo the game had things not gone the way they had. That's the thing about a well-designed strategy game, though. You always get your orthodox ways of thinking, but oftentimes unorthodox behavior will throw a wrench in things and screw everything up. You plan for the orthodox and oh my god, you get screwed by something silly! If possible, Mozart might still benefit from having T1 units out there. It's kinda up to him. This is a tough spot to recover from now. I think he might be wrapped up under pressure though, just trying to get something out there strong enough to put a stop to this. It does look like once again Mozart has somewhat blunted this attack. He's still leading with resources, he can still turn this around. He's not exactly in the clear, but he's pushing Voodoo back just a little bit. He's lost another mass extractor, but they're still pretty even as far as resources go. Voodoo's got guys prowling around, just causing trouble in the back of the base. You can see that Mozart is trying to use a bomber to get rid of this spider bot that's just got free reign of the place. It killed a mass extractor. But come on, Mozart, you can still do this. You've got defender's advantage. You're still even on resources. Here comes another round of rhinos out of the gates. And of course another 20 spider bots down from Voodoo. But sadly, before those spider bots even arrive, Voodoo is using overcharge on the rhinos, taking them out. Okay, now, this looks bad, but here's what I'm thinking. Mozart has got 3 bases on the far west. What if Mozart stops building rhino tanks with those, and instead just builds a couple fire beetles? Now, fire beetles have the same amount of health as a little spider bot, but they explode. They are suicide units. If he could get one over to Voodoo's ACU, he might be able to win right here and now. Now, granted, I am kind of recommending a ridiculous gamble that may not help out that much, but, you know, what's Mozart got to lose at this point? Voodoo is obviously a good enough player that he could probably micro away from it. But it's one of those things that when it works, the other person swears bloody vengeance on your name, and then kicks themselves for not being more perceptive. The reason I suggest it is because you'd really only have to tag Voodoo one time for it to be devastating. But of course this is one of these things, these after-the-fact kind of deals when I'm relaxed as an observer and I say, "Oh, Mozart, I see a strategy you didn't try. What, were you under pressure or something, just trying to do the same thing until it worked out for you? How banal and human. You should have tried my stupid idea. It's much better." But fact is, the tanks are more reliable, you know what exactly they're gonna do, and here comes a pretty decently sized squad. Even so, things are looking pretty grim for Mozart. His ACU is surrounded, and it doesn't seem like he can get this pressure off himself. If Mozart wants to turn this around, he's got to do something to make Voodoo feel like he's the one who's under attack. Build fire beetles. Do it! Build fire beetles! I don't think you are even trying to build fire beetles. Well, don't come crying to me when you lose because you didn't build fire beetles. Mozart, though, still focusing on his economy. He is now at 85 mass to Voodoo's around 60. So by that metric, he's not even losing. He's still steadily making gains against Voodoo in the grand scheme. Now, actually, the reason I recommend building fire beetles is not because I think they would win the game. Probably, most likely, they wouldn't. But it might make Voodoo a little bit fearful of having his ACU so close to the front. Just a notable message, hey, you are 10 feet from death if one of these fire beetles can get close enough to explode on you. However, as it is, it looks like these rhinos are turning things around well enough. Voodoo's ACU cannot overcharge them fast enough to fight them off. Or, however, it can, as we're seeing him do, but we've got more units coming in, shoring up the numbers for Mozart. Unfortunately, it looks like Mozart is being very aggressive, pursuing Voodoo, trying to kill him here and now. Looks like Mozart has switched over to T1 units, apparently having had the same idea that I expressed earlier on, now that the pressure is relieved a little bit, but it is too late. Mozart is surrounded. My guess is, he was under pressure for so long, he believed that there was no way that he had the resource advantage at this point. He thought that he was in a losing position. And there he goes, his ACU, up in a beautiful nuclear blast. And that is the game. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I hope I will catch you all next time.